There are moments when you realize the more you speak, the more tangled things become. The more you explain, the less others understand. The harder you try to defend your point, the more exhausted your mind feels. Amid a world noisy with arguments, opinions, and reactions, silence seems to have become a forgotten art. Yet, in Buddhist wisdom, silence is neither weakness nor avoidance. It is the mark of a mind refined through stillness and observation. The Buddha once taught extinguish anger with love, extinguish harshness with kindness, extinguish greed with generosity, and extinguish falsehood with truth. This is not merely moral guidance, but also a profound lesson on the power of inner calm. When you are silent, you prevent the outer world from disturbing the inner one. You withdraw your energy from the whirlpool of winning and losing, right and wrong, and return to your natural clarity. In silence, you neither lose nor need to win. You simply see things as they are. Today's world prizes those who speak loudly and react quickly, yet few realize that the right silence can completely change the outcome of a situation. Silence is not emptiness, it is the space where wisdom speaks. In that space, you no longer need words to prove anything. Your actions, presence, and composure speak for you. In the art of living, knowing when to speak is a skill, but knowing when to remain silent, that is wisdom. And sometimes it is in the quietest moments that we hear most clearly what life has been trying to tell us. Anger is like fire when it flares up. It burns away reason before we even realize what's happening. The Buddha once said, "Holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned first." Each time we react in anger, we surrender clarity and let fleeting emotion take command of our actions. We say what should not be said, do what should not be done, and then live with the consequences. Silence in such moments is not cowardice, but the strength of one who governs the inner world. When anger arises, the wisest response is not to react, but to pause. One deep breath, one brief silence, that is the wall protecting you from words and deeds you may regret. Silence gives the mind time to settle, allowing the wave of emotion to pass without pulling you under. When you do not speak, you begin to hear the voice of reason, of compassion, of truth. And in that very moment, you transform the fire of anger into the light of understanding. The wise never let a minute of rage destroy years of peace. They understand that silence is how one saves oneself before trying to save others. When you stay silent, you tell yourself, "I choose peace over being right." For the greatest victory in life is not silencing others, but quieting your own mind. So next time anger arises, do not try to extinguish it with words. Take a deep breath, step back, and hold your silence like someone watching clouds drift across the sky. The anger will fade, but the calm you preserve in that moment, that is the mark of a mind that has begun to awaken to wisdom. No one likes being misunderstood or unfairly judged. When criticism arises, our first instinct is usually to defend ourselves. Yet in the very moment we try to protect ourselves through words, we lose our inner peace. The Buddha taught, "Do not speak unless your words are better than silence." Sometimes silence itself is the most noble response, a calmness that compels others to reflect upon themselves. When you are unfairly criticized, you do not need to win through words. Let time, your actions, and your character be the evidence. Silence does not mean agreement. It is the self-mastery of one who knows there is nothing to prove. While others use words to attack you, use stillness to preserve your dignity. By not reacting, you show that you are greater than the pull of anger and ego. That silence becomes a mirror for others to see themselves while you walk away lightly untouched by the dust of words. Remember that others' judgments only have power if you allow them to reach you. When you remain silent, you take away that power. You keep your energy intact and refuse to feed negativity. Silence gives you space to observe. Is there a fragment of truth in this criticism from which I can learn? If yes, receive it with humility. If not, let it pass like the wind. A wise person does not need to win every argument, only to win over their reactive mind. For only when we remain calm, amidst attack, are we truly free. In that silence, you not only protect your integrity, but also demonstrate that no one can take away your peace unless you permit it yourself. Some words take only a second to speak, yet their echo can wound another for years. The Buddha taught better than 1,000 useless words is one word that brings peace. It means that wisdom is not in speaking much, but in speaking rightly with timing, kindness, and sincerity. In life, we often forget that words are a form of energy. They can uplift or destroy. And sometimes, silence itself is the highest expression of compassion. When you feel the urge to speak, to explain, or to comment about someone, pause for a moment and ask yourself, is this truly necessary to say? Will it help anyone, or is it only to satisfy my fleeting emotion? If the answer is no, then silence is the wiser act. For silence in that moment is not fear, it is awareness, the conscious choice not to create more pain. The wise do not use words to judge, they use understanding to heal. By restraining speech, you nurture peace both within yourself and in others. Speaking harshly is as easy as throwing a stone into water, but erasing the ripples it leaves behind may take a lifetime. In Buddhism, this is called right speech, speaking what is true, kind, and harmonious. Yet sometimes the truest word is the one left unspoken. Silence can also be a form of right speech when it arises from understanding and compassion. So before you speak, remember there are things we say to prove we are right, but in silence we prove that we understand. And understanding is always the greater victory. Emotions are waves. When the waves rise high, the boat of reason can easily be overturned. In those moments, the wisest thing is not to speak, but to be still. The Buddha taught peace comes from within, do not seek it without. When emotions dominate us, every word becomes an arrow shot in the dark, without direction, guided only by the force of anger, anxiety, or hurt. We think we are releasing tension, but in truth we are only deepening confusion both for ourselves and others. Silence, in the heat of emotion, is the act of one who has mastered oneself. When you choose silence, you are no longer carried away by the wave, you become the one observing it. A deep breath, a brief pause that is enough to separate yourself from the storm of feelings. Within that gap, the mind has a chance to cool and clarity returns. In that moment, instead of speaking from anger, you can speak from wisdom. Instead of reacting, you can reflect. There are words spoken in emotion whose echoes cannot be erased no matter how many apologies follow. Yet a single moment of silence at that time can preserve an entire relationship. The wise are not those without emotion, but those who know when emotion should be observed rather than expressed. Practice pausing before you speak, especially when your heart beats fast, your voice trembles, or your eyes grow hot. For in that instant, if you can remain silent, you have already won, not over another, but over yourself. It is a quiet victory, yet the deepest one. Emotions are waves, but peace is the shore. And only in silence can you truly reach that shore. There are moments in life when words become unnecessary. In the face of loss, sacredness, or pain, too deep for expression, silence is the highest form of reverence. In such moments, to speak may break the stillness and disrupt the natural flow of emotion. The Buddha once said, "In the end, what remains of life is not how much you have spoken, but how deeply you have loved, how fully you have lived, and how much you have let go. When the mind grows still, the heart finally learns to love." Silence in moments of solemnity or sorrow is not avoidance, it is full presence. You need no words to express sincerity. Your gaze, your breath, and the calmness of your being already convey genuine compassion. Sometimes just sitting beside someone in silence offers more comfort than any words could. In silence, hearts connect without the need for language. Reverence is not in rituals or outward form, but in the attitude of pausing, speech to listen, pausing the mind to feel, pausing judgment to understand. When you are silent with sincerity, your energy becomes gentle and refined, cleansing even the space around you. We often believe we must say something to show we care, but often it is the silence filled with presence that becomes the greatest gift. For in that stillness you give others permission to simply be, to cry, to feel, to release. And in that same silence you learn the greatest lesson of all: reverence is not merely an act toward the outside world, but a state of purity within your own heart. There is something more dangerous than ignorance speaking before you truly understand. The Buddha once taught, "The fool who knows he is a fool is already wise." A simple line, yet it holds an entire philosophy of humility and discernment. So many conflicts, misunderstandings, and wounds in life do not arise because people are evil, but because they speak too soon before they know enough. When we lack understanding, our words can become unintentional blades causing harm without awareness. Silence in moments of uncertainty is not weakness, but a form of wisdom that knows how to wait. When you remain silent, you create space to observe, to listen, to learn. Those who rush to speak hear only themselves. Those who can stay silent hear the world. That silence protects you from error, from sowing misunderstanding, and from disrespecting truth, which never reveals itself in haste. When we do not know, the wisest thing is to admit that we do not know. The one who dares to confess their ignorance has already opened the door to learning. The one who pretends to know everything has already closed their mind. In Buddhism, this arrogance of unawareness is called self-satisfied ignorance, the root of all error. One careless statement can shatter trust. One false retelling can distort truth. Thus, silence becomes a shield that safeguards both yourself and the truth itself. The wise never fear silence, for they know silence is the beginning of understanding. The shallow mind, however, fears the emptiness of not knowing, and fills it hastily with words. But truth is not born from noise. It emerges from stillness and observation. Practice pausing before you speak, especially when you do not yet see the whole picture. Sometimes a single moment of silence can save a trust, a relationship, or even a life. No one enjoys hearing criticism even when it is true. The ego craves recognition and resists reflection. Yet in Buddhism, one who dares to listen to correction is already moving closer to wisdom. The Buddha taught, "He who flatters you in your faults is your enemy. He who points them out is your true friend." For criticism born from goodwill is a mirror that reveals the blind spots we could not see ourselves. When you are criticized, your first reaction may be to defend, to explain, to argue, or to reject. But in that very moment, silence is the mark of maturity. Be silent to hear fully, to feel, to understand what is truly being said. Resisting the urge to react creates space for wisdom to respond instead of impulse. Sometimes within the most uncomfortable feedback lies the seed of enlightenment. Silence is not endurance. It is the choice to learn rather than to resist. When your mind is calm, you hear more than words. You hear the intention behind them. You begin to discern which comments carry sincerity and which stem from carelessness, which lessons to take in and which to release. In that stillness, you turn criticism into material for self-mastery. The wise do not fear being told they are wrong. They fear having no one left brave enough to tell them the truth. The immature, however, mistake every critique for an attack. Silence breaks down the ego's defense walls, softening the heart, and only then can genuine transformation begin. Receive criticism with gratitude, even if it is not wrapped in pleasant words. Not everyone cares enough to tell you what you need to hear, instead of what you want to hear. Keeping silent while listening is how you cultivate humility, the root of all wisdom. And when you learn to be silent in the face of correction, you are not only listening to others, you are listening to yourself growing. Injustice is something no one wishes to encounter, yet it is an inseparable part of life. When faced with unfairness, our first instinct is to resist, to speak out and fight for what we believe is right. But the Buddha taught hatred never ends by hatred. Only love can end hatred. In other words, responding to anger with more anger only keeps the cycle of suffering alive. Silence held in mindfulness becomes the first step toward wisdom and inner strength. Silence in the face of injustice does not mean submission or weakness, it is a pause for clarity. When you stop, you see the full picture, the cause, the effect, and the limits of both yourself and others. This stillness prevents impulsive reactions and words that could worsen the situation. A mind boiling with rage cannot see the way forward. Only when the water is calm does the moon reflect clearly. The wise do not act out of anger, they act out of understanding. Silence gives you time to settle the storm within, then choose to face injustice with reason and compassion. Sometimes it means speaking up at the right time. Other times waiting for the moment when your action will have true impact. Silence is not inaction. It is preparation for right action. Throughout history, many great movements have begun in stillness. The silence of the wise can make the unjust pause and look within, for that silence is not born of fear, but of a mind that cannot be shaken by hatred. If you respond to injustice with hatred, you become part of it. But if you remain calm, you become the light that dissolves it. That is the power of silence. At the right time, not silence of surrender, but silence rooted in the knowing that true justice can only arise from wisdom and compassion, never from the scream of resentment. Gratitude is a state of mind. It needs no words, no ceremony, only full presence. The Buddha taught, be grateful for, even if you learn little today, you have still learned something. Gratitude is not in the saying, but in the seeing and deeply feeling the simple blessings around you, and it is in silence that gratitude becomes purest. When you fall silent to reflect, you begin to see how many things you've taken for granted, the breath that continues the morning light, a person who listens, or simply the peace within this very moment. Silence is the space where gratitude blossoms, for in stillness there is no comparison, no demand, only an open heart meeting life as it is. Gratitude is not forced positivity. It is the ability to see enough. In silence you can hear the heartbeat of life itself, where every small thing carries a gift. A moment of stillness is enough to realize that even difficulties are blessings in disguise, shaping you into someone stronger and wiser. To practice gratitude in silence is to nourish the soul. When you sit quietly saying nothing, simply feeling the fortune of being alive, loved, and able to learn that energy radiates outward like waves of serenity. You do not need to say thank you aloud. The universe understands the language of the heart. True gratitude always echoes in silence. Let every morning, every breath, every meal, and every step become a silent prayer of thanks. For a grateful person is not one who has more, but one who sees the enoughness in what they already have. When gratitude runs deep, all lack feels lighter, and every moment turns into a miracle. In that silent gratitude, life itself becomes more beautiful, and you more complete, awakened, and at peace. Silence is not avoidance, it is the art of those who understand their inner strength. In a noisy world where everyone wants to speak, the one who can stay silent is the one who is truly listening to others, to life, and to their own heart. The Buddha once taught silence is not emptiness. It is where truth resounds. Every time you choose silence at the right moment, you are cultivating wisdom, compassion, and serenity within your soul. Silence teaches you not to react, but to reflect, not to rush to conclusions, but to observe, not to chase the noise outside, but to return to peace within. For the greatest voice is not found in sound, but in the calm energy that radiates from a still mind. When you practice silence, you begin to realize that every word carries power, and the fewer useless words you speak, the purer your mind becomes. The 9 lessons on silence we have walked through, from facing anger and criticism to practicing gratitude and confronting injustice, all lead back to one source mastery of the mind. The one who masters their speech has already traveled half the path to enlightenment. For when words are restrained, the mind naturally settles, and when the mind settles, wisdom arises on its own. Carry this spirit into your daily life. When angry, breathe and be silent. When hurt, pause and observe. When you wish to speak, ask yourself, will this word bring peace? And when you feel gratitude, let your heart speak instead of your mouth. Each moment of silence is a cleansing of the soul. Let silence become your companion on the path of awakening. For in the end, peace does not come from speaking rightly, it comes from knowing when to be still. And when your mind is truly calm, the world around you will naturally grow gentle.